Click record.
There it is. All right. Good morning and welcome to Great Minds Love to Read. I am your host, Rolanda Lyles, and here today we have Miss Kathleen Templeton, the author of Jar of Tears. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you, Rolanda?
I'm doing good. So today we wanted to delve into your book, Jar of Tears. I read it when I was doing book reviews, and let me tell you, the book really dives deep into the story of a young girl who's grieving the loss of her mother to cancer. And so the story really just goes into how she dealt with that grief process, or tried to not deal with it, and eventually dealt with the grief process with her and her family. So would you just tell us a little bit more about what prompted you to write this story?
Yes, I wrote this book because I lost my mother when I was 9 years old, and it was an unexpected death. I didn't know that she was so sick that she would have died. I thought she had the flu, and it was a week before Christmas, and I was devastated. And in that day, it felt like my life had ended. It felt like half my heart had died. It was the most devastating experience I've ever had. And I tried to avoid the grief. I tried not to grieve. I tried not to cry because it made people uncomfortable, specifically adults. It made friends uncomfortable. So I pushed it down and I tried to avoid it because everybody else was able to move on and I just couldn't move on. I didn't realize that I wasn't moving on yet until I had a Christian therapist talk to me about some family matters. And she asked me to talk about my childhood, and I did. And she said, Kathleen, you haven't grieved the loss of your mother from 30 years ago. And grief has no expiration date. This is something you have to do. I was dumbfounded. I didn't realize that. So she said, one of the things that you can do to fully grieve is write your mother a letter. And so I went home that night like a dutiful student and I sat down at my desk and I wrote, Dear Mom. And that's all I had to write. I cried for the rest of the night. I couldn't get out any other words. I couldn't even get out, I miss you. Here's an update on my life. It was the floodwaters broke open. And every time I would meet with my therapist, she would push me to the point where I would cry. And then she'd say, that's where the healing is. And I hated that. She'd say, we're going to have to be uncomfortable in the pain. And the pain will tell you when it's ready to leave, but you can't abbreviate your grief. You can't speed it up. You can't be more efficient with it. You just have to let grief tell you when it's done. And so after having all this help, I realized there are so many kids that lose a parent or a grandparent. They don't have a Christian therapist, they don't have a therapist. And so I took everything that I learned from my therapist and I wove it into my book. Now, I just have to show a picture of my therapist because she was a lovely person. She just died this last August, and she died after a very short illness. And so she taught me everything I needed to know about grief, and she supported that with prayer and questioning and support. And now that she's gone, I have to grieve her, but she's giving me all the tools that I need to learn how to grieve and to not shut it down, not suppress it, not hide it, but to be open about it, honest about it, be tearful about it, and talk about it. So the book Jar of Tears was me sharing what I've learned with people who may not have those resources. It's basically for adults and for children, or it's for adults to read with children.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That does kind of segue into what I was going to ask about the vantage point that you wrote from. So you wrote from Miracle, but then as an adult and being an adult still like realizing that hey, I didn't process my grief. You're also still writing from the parent's point of view as well. And so that's a unique perspective that you can write from remembering all the things, the feelings and the things that you went through as a child and how you felt in those times. And then also now as the adult writing from the adult standpoint of, how do I, help my child to deal with these feelings, or how do I support them? Um, I like that you said your therapist gave the suggestion of you writing a letter, um, and that's a great suggestion, especially for, you know, if we're dealing with things now as adults, and the person, it's been years since they've been gone, and it's like, how do I still, how do I still say what I need to say? They're not here. So you still are able to write those things down, and get it out, and still just say it as a release. Because we still, to process and to deal with things, we need to be able to release. So I thought that that was a good point that you made. That, and then the crying. A lot of us try to not cry. You said earlier, we try to not cry. We just try to like push it down and say it'll go away. But crying really does help to release those feelings and release. When we don't have anything to say, just a good cry. Sometimes it's just good therapy too. So I like that you mentioned that. Um, I did want to talk a little bit about, we talked about in the grief sessions that Miracle went to, how she met
Yes.
Xavier, and he was another student who his dad was going through, he had cancer, and they were going through that part of dealing with, he has this disease, and the boy in the therapy sessions didn't really want to participate or say anything, and kind of just pushed everything away. And I like that Miracle's character, at first she kind of didn't say anything either, but as through the story, as she's starting to have other people talking to her and speaking to her and help her process, she starts to help him, even though she's not all the way there yet. She's helping him with, hey, I understand my mom, she had cancer too. I understand how you feel, and can relate to him, and that helped him with wanting to open up and talk as well. So excuse me, just the importance of having community and people that you can talk to and relate to, or feel that you can relate to, that helps. um the other part of the story that I found interesting was her relationship with her dad, and then with her stepmom Jessica. And from the dad side of things, he's trying to help his daughter, and he understands that we lost your mom, and this was a person that he loved too. So they're trying to process that. And then on the other side of things, Miracle and her stepmom Jessica's relationship, which was, as step parents and step kids, is already kind of a iffy relationship. So now on top of that, she's grieving, and so trying to navigate that relationship with her. So could you speak a little more to that side of things?
Oh, sure. Well, I wanted to create a story that was honest and hopeful. And so I created this character, Jessica, and I created her with a very distinct character arc, because I think once step parents understand their role and they understand they're not in competition with a deceased parent, it opens them up a little bit. So at first, Jessica was not thrilled with having a new child come into her family that is not her child. And she had to change her entire life. She had career aspirations. She had to put those on hold because now she had three children, not just two. And so Miracle was quite aware that her presence brought some financial strain to the family, and she was embarrassed. And Jessica might not have handled the presence of Miracle all that well. I don't know if she handled having a grieving child in her household all that well. But with most step families, it takes a lot of dancing and going this way and going that way until you find your groove. And every family is a little bit different. But I made the dining room table or the kitchen table to be symbolic of Miracle's position in the family. So at first, she had to drag a chair in from another room and straddle one of the table legs to sit beside her dad, where she felt safe. And then at the end of the story, when their relationship, Jessica and Miracle's relationship, started to bond, that's when they bought a new kitchen table that would comfortably accommodate a new family member. So it was a formalization of, yes, you're part of the family, and we're going to make it comfortable for you to be part of this family. And then the secondary gift of that was that they got to put the small kitchen table in the basement to create an art space for Miracle so she could do something that made her soul feel good. But yeah, the relationship with the steps is always very difficult. And children are very loyal to their parents, regardless of the relationship they have. Even children whose parents are abusive or neglectful, they still love their parents. And so it's difficult for a young girl, and I can relate to this, where you lose your mother and you have a stepmother and you feel this strained loyalty. And so I wanted to speak to that. And that was why I had to write in their dynamic as well, because that's really tricky to navigate.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for that. I think for me, I noticed the turning point, I guess, between Jessica and Miracle was the situation at the school when the guy was like trying to bully her and bother her, and then Jessica came out of nowhere and was about ready to beat him up over her, and that really, I guess, kind of shocked Miracle because it's like, oh, she doesn't hate me. And I think, for from the moment that she had to move into the house, she already felt like, I got to go be here, and she doesn't like me. She hates me and I hate her. And, there's tension between them. And so, like you said, I don't think Jessica at first probably didn't handle having a grieving kid, you know, as an addition very well, but she probably also didn't know how. And then, they're tiptoeing around each other, they're trying some things, and, things are causing more tension or seeming to get worse. And then I think that situation really was like a turning point because, Miracle got to see that, hey, Jessica does like
Mhm.
care about me. She doesn't, hate me like I think she does. And that also prompted Miracle to, assert herself more to defend Jessica, like at the table when her kids were taken for granted. She was cooking food for them or something, and
Mhm.
they didn't appreciate it. And Miracle's like, hey, well, you have your mom, and she's trying to do these things for you, and you should love and appreciate your mom, because you have your mom. So and that really, touched Jessica. So I think that was definitely like a big turning point in their relationship in the story. And it was probably one of my favorite parts of the story because, imagine, she's coming off this bus and then, her mom's like coming at this guy and like in his face, like she's
Yes.
going to beat him up. So yeah, it was a very good moment.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, there's something about children that are grieving. They look sad. They look weak and vulnerable in a sense because they are. They're sidetracked. I mean, I remember being in school, I couldn't focus on the lessons because all I could think about was when is my mom coming back and why isn't she coming back? Why would God take her away forever? And so my studies dropped. I did terrible in school because I was distracted. And then this, little bully, he decided he was going to take a cheap shot at me and he physically punched me, a sucker punch from behind. And my stepmother, uh, you know, walked right towards him like a steam engine, and she scolded him in front of a whole bus full of kids and humiliated him really for punching me and kind of kicking me while I was down. I think our whole family was pretty angry about that. But it's a really tough thing. Kids can be really tricky, and I learned that you have to be kind all the time, and even if you don't feel like it, just give kids space. And then when I was a child and I got older and I started to make new friends, which was not an easy task when you're a grieving child, I would tell my friends, don't say mean things about your mother. I don't have my mother. Your mother could die tomorrow and you would regret this. And when you're in junior high and you're telling your friends that, you're not very popular. And when you remind your friends that in high school, please don't yell at your mom about makeup or don't do this. You might not have your mom tomorrow. It's really hard to make friends doing that, even though you're right. Not all kids want to be reminded of it. But boy, did I feel jealous of a lot of kids growing up that their mothers would have nice, nice time with them, or their mothers would take them out shopping. And I thought, one day when I get to heaven, my mother is going to take me shopping and we're going to do that. But right now I don't have that. And there was a lot of jealousy that I had with children that were in a mommy and daddy family, a nuclear family. Oh boy, I really envied them. That was hard.
Yeah, I bet. The other the other thing that I did want to I guess have you talk more about was during like the whole time Miracle's mom was very she was a person of faith.
Mhm.
She, had them go to church and, she was, at rehearsals and doing different things for the church. And so always involved. And then when Miracle lost her, Miracle started to question God, like,
Mhm.
if you love me, then why did you take my mom away? And then I did like that the pastor at the church, he, gave her the Bible verses. And so while she's, trying to like process and grieve, the verses would, speak to her about different situations or different things that she was thinking. And then, how you tied that into the jar of tears. One of the verses was talking about how God, God cares about, the things that we care about, and He cares about if we're sad, and He collects our tears. Um, and then just as she's, continuing through her journey, and new people are coming into her life, and you know, being accepting of her, being her friends, connecting with her, and just showing her love. I like how at the end of the story she does come to the revelation that, God does love me, and He
Mhm.
loves me enough to like send me, these people to
Yes.
show me love and to, show me even about like her mom's friend, like people that still that knew her mom, that knew, how her mom was, that still would communicate with her and, support her. So just to speak more on that part of the
Mhm.
story.
Well, that's what I loved about the Jessica character is when Miracle spent time, or sorry, not Jessica, with Sylvia, the mother's friend. When Miracle spent time with her mother's friend Sylvia, Sylvia made it feel like she was getting to know her mother. So she would tell stories about, oh, your mother likes this kind of ice cream. Oh, your mother used to play tricks. Oh, your mother and I used to do this. And so I think every grieving child needs an adult who knows the parent and can talk to them and teach the child about their parent and say, this is what your mom was like. This is what she liked. This is what we did together. I think that's really important. And when you lose your mother, you lose that. You lose what your mother was like as a person, not just as a mother. So if you have somebody that can explain that and teach you a little bit about your parent, it's such a blessing. And I would just wanted to say about the pastor, you can't really encourage people in faith unless you have a relationship with that person. And so, because Miracle knew this pastor from the time she was a baby, she knew him and she trusted him. And so, they had a relationship that she knew he loves me. He's not going to lie to me intentionally. And so she was able to really think about what he said. She didn't always agree and she didn't always think he was right. But when he handed her a Bible, he had marked out pages that he thought were appropriate for her to read. And I've done that myself because the Bible can be very intimidating to people that are not familiar with it. And so I've marked out my favorite verses and said, look these ones up and give them a read. And so when the pastor did that for her, she thought, okay, well, he loves me. I'll read this as a duty to him. And, he's probably going to want to hear that it made a big difference. So I'll read it begrudgingly. And then she notices that these Bible verses come to her at just the right time. Well, we could say divine timing because God does weave these things in at the right time. Just like how Pastor Will had shown them the tapestry. And it looks so messy on the one side. Oh, that's embarrassing. That's not a work of art. And when he turns it over, she sees this beautiful work of art. So it's messy on one side, but it makes perfect sense on the divine side. And so when Miracle has this relationship with these people, God is moving these people into her life to love on her in a way that is visible and tangible for her. His children are so literal that, and God knows this. This is what I love about God. He knows what children need and he brings them in. But sometimes you need people to stand back and say to the child, you might not see God, but you can see what God is doing. But you have to stop and you have to look. Maybe you need to make a list of all the blessings and all the people that God has surrounded you with for you to be reminded that He's doing that for you. So I think that's why we have these characters that God has kind of stationed all around her to give her support and encouragement in her grief.
That's good. I like that you mentioned about like a list. Like sometimes,
Mm.
we can get so caught up in, what we don't have
Yeah.
and what we're missing. And then if we just take the time to like look and really see like what, instead of focusing on the things that I don't have, look at all the things that I do have. And then we can really see, you know, how much God does really bless us and how much He does do for us and, give to us. Um, and to just try to, see things from the other side of things. And I like that even in your story, yes, Miracle is, she has lost her mom, but, God has also sent her like this whole community of people,
Yes.
and other people that stepped up, in her
Mhm.
mom's stead to, help fill the empty spaces, not to replace her mom, but to, remind her that, hey, you still have love, you still have community, you still have, all of these things, and there still is, a future for you. Um, I like that, once her relationship with her stepmom, I won't say was repaired because they didn't really have one, but once they built a
Yeah.
relationship, they were, her stepmom and her dad, they, encouraged her to continue with her art, and
Mhm.
they supported her, and would, help find her things to, show that they're supporting, and they want you to continue doing this because this is a talent that you have, and, that they want you to continue that for your future.
Mhm.
And she kept doing the art shows in
Mhm.
honor of her mom,
Yeah.
but it's still, her continuing the gift, that she had. And her new friends, she might have lost some that, left because when her mom passed, but she got new friends. She got better ones, good ones that,
Mhm.
would be there to support her and to listen when she needed to talk about things or to be patient with her. And if she needed to cry about things, she didn't feel judged, because she was sad.
Mhm.
So, we lose some things, but sometimes the things that we lose, we don't need. They're not always good for us. So I like you had many different facets in the story, that speak to different situations,
Mhm.
in life. But yeah, I thought it was really powerful, the things that you put in there, and even just the reminder. And she came to the realization at the end that, hey, mom is not here now, but, because she came to the conclusion about, faith in God, that God does love me and that God is here. And she knows that, in the future, one day I'll get to see mom again. So, that faith and that hope in knowing that, there still is future. So I thought that all of that was a great way to end it, and then just for us all to know, like as readers, that, hey, like you said, we all have grief, we all have things that happen in life, um but also knowing that this life is, what's here is temporary, it's not going to be forever. And so knowing that we have, you know if we have faith in God, we have hope for that future, and to
Mhm.
know that the future is what's going to be forever. So I thought that all of that was amazing. It was a great read.
Thank you.
Definitely for anybody that is, going through loss or has experienced loss, or if you're a person trying to, help someone that is, maybe it's not you, but someone that is, it helps as far as us understanding how to help them and how to relate to them, and to have that patience, with them, and just give them the space to feel like they're free to express what they need to express and not feel judged.
Mhm.
So it was a lot, but it was great. It was great. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the book. I'm gonna go buy me a copy because I read mine for the review, but I'm gonna go get me one.
Oh, you're so
But yeah, definitely. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with
a
the
couple
audience?
things.
Yeah.
I liked to make the kitchen table symbolic of Miracle's position in the family. And towards the end, they celebrated this Happy Heaven Day to acknowledge and validate the day that Miracle's mother died. And so they had this new kitchen table, and Jessica made a dish that her mother had made in honor of her, and she put a picture of Miracle's mother at the table. So there was still an empty place at the table where Miracle's mother would have sat if she was alive. But I think at some point, Miracle looks around the table and says, I didn't want to be an only child. And it's horrible that God had taken my mother, but now I have two siblings who adore me. And I have a stepmother who cares about me and treats me well. And I have a dad that has always loved me. So there's still that empty space, but then there's more seats around the table. And they made an effort to acknowledge her loss and to make her pictures and cards and a cake to try to remind her your mother is in heaven. She's not sick. She's waiting for you. It's not going to be that long before you get to see her again. And not to sound in a creepy way, but when you think about pain and you think about what it says at the end of the Bible in Revelation, there is no more crying or sadness or sickness. And so we know that moms miss their children terribly. So if Miracle's mother is in heaven and there's no pain, then it must be a very small amount of time that Miracle's mother is going to wait, because a divine time and earthly time is very different. So I think it's important for people to know, people in the faith and people that want to learn more about the faith, that it feels like a long time on earth, but it's actually very short. And if we follow our faith and we follow Jesus and we understand that we are so loved that he died even just for us so that we can go to heaven and spend eternity with him and our loved ones, I just don't see that there's a better answer or a better anecdote to grief than that. To think, yes, it's hard right now. Grieving somebody that important is devastating, but God has a plan. You have to be patient. You have to learn a little bit about the Bible and timing and all these things, but the payoff is so great. So I think it's really important that people that are grieving consider faith if they've never done that before, because God is seeing you cry. Even if you reject God, he is seeing your pain, he is seeing your tears, and he's collecting them. If you accept Jesus, then you get to be reunited with him and to meet him. It's just very important that we remember that God is real, and not a lot of people spend that time. But when you're grieving and you're trying to figure out what is the point of all this, that's a good time to consider it. That's what I would have to say about that.
Yeah, definitely. When we're grieving, we're asking all the questions and want to know why and all the things. So I do agree that it is definitely, if nothing else, to remember, and to find hope from that is that, if you have that faith in God and you know that the person that you love did too, then this is only, like you said, it's temporary, and then you'll be able to see them again. So yes, thank you so much for that and sharing that. Well, this is going to conclude our meeting. I'm so thankful, and I appreciate that you were willing to come on and speak with us today. And I wish you so well on your book, on sales, and that you have a great turnout, um, and just that it's able to help so many people, because it is very much a great resource and a great read, but the story and the message behind it is a great resource and a help for people who are going through grief and struggling, or people that are struggling and wondering how to help
Mhm.
someone they know who is experiencing grief right now. So thank you so much, Miss Kathleen.
I'm honored to be on this Zoom call. I'm so thankful. And thank you for your kind words and encouragement.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.